All right. Tonight we're diving into the wonderfully strange world of Victorian social etiquette. Trust me, some of the behaviors people considered proper back then were downright bizarre. By the time we're done, your most awkward modern-day moments will feel like a breeze in comparison. Oh, and if you've been enjoying these stories, I'd love it if you could hit that like button or subscribe. It really helps. Also, I'm always fascinated to know where you're tuning in from. So, drop your city and the current time in the comments. It honestly blows my mind to think that people all over the globe are falling asleep to this. Now, let's rewind the clock and journey back to Victorian England. Buckle up. It's going to be quite the ride. Congratulations. You've just awakened in London sometime around the year 1850. Your eyes flutter open to find yourself lying in a narrow iron bed, not the plush memory foam mattress you're used to. This one's stuffed with coarse horsehair, slightly scratchy, a little uneven. The room around you feels cold, really cold. The fire that once flickered in the grate has burned down to a dim glow, casting long shadows over the furniture. A heavy wooden wardrobe, a ceramic washstand, and a modest dressing table with a small mirror. Outside, you can hear the faint clatter of iron-rimmed carriage wheels rolling over cobblestones. Somewhere down the street a dog barks. The air filtering in through the cracks beneath the door and the window frames carries that familiar, ever-present scent of coal smoke, an unavoidable part of life in London. It's mixed with the faint aroma of bergamot oil, rising from a small perfume bottle sitting on your dressing table. That sharp, citrusy note that seems to cling to everyone these days. The sheets wrapped around you are plain cotton, not especially soft, but at least they're clean. You're dressed in a flannel nightgown, buttoned all the way up to your chin, because heaven forbid anyone catch a glimpse of your neck or wrists while you sleep. That would be quite the scandal. A small bell sits on your bedside table. You reach for it and give it a delicate ring. Almost instantly, you hear footsteps ascending the stairs. Your maid, Mary, appears in the doorway, already dressed neatly despite the early hour. "Good morning, miss," she says with a polite curtsy. "Shall I open the curtains?" She doesn't wait for your reply. Crossing the room, she pulls back the heavy velvet drapes, letting in the soft gray light of a London morning. The window pane is streaked with soot, a byproduct of the thousands of chimneys that pump smoke into the sky every day. "What would you like to wear today, miss?" Mary asks, walking to the wardrobe and opening its tall doors. Inside hangs a collection of dresses, each one more elaborate and layered than the last. And here is where your lesson in Victorian social rules truly begins. Because every single thing you do today, from the clothes you choose to how you speak, walk, or even glance at someone, is governed by an extraordinarily complex code of behavior. The Victorians didn't just live with rules, they mastered them. It was like living life on expert-level difficulty, where one misstep could lead to instant social ruin. "You've got your morning call with Mrs. Hartley at 11, Mary reminds you, while selecting a deep blue day dress. And then tea with your cousin Emily at 4. These so-called morning calls are your first taste of Victorian social logic. Despite the name, they don't actually happen in the morning. They're scheduled between 3 and 5 in the afternoon. Don't ask why, just accept it. Calling them afternoon calls would earn you confused looks at best. Each call is precisely 15 minutes long. Not 14, not 16, exactly 15. And yes, you'll need a pocket watch to keep yourself on schedule because overstaying is seen as highly impolite. Now, Mary begins dressing you, and it's not a quick process. First comes the chemise, a long cotton slip that serves as the base layer, then the corset. Ah yes, the corset. Mary wraps it around your waist and starts tugging on the laces. A proper lady's waist should fit within her own hands, you say, trying to sound casual as your lungs begin to protest. Yes, miss, Mary replies, pulling even tighter. Your ribs shift. You can barely breathe. Fashion, Victorian style. Then come the petticoats, 3 of them, layered one on top of the next, building the base. Next is the crinoline, a cage-like structure of steel hoops that gives your skirt its dramatic bell shape. And finally, the dress itself. Snug bodice, full skirt, long sleeves. By the time Mary's done, you're wearing about 15 pounds of clothing. She moves on to your hair, brushing it back tightly and pinning it into a perfect bun at the base of your neck. No loose strands, no room for disorder. Everything must be tidy, everything must be proper. Gloves or mittens today, miss? Mary asks, holding both out for you to inspect. Gloves, you reply, remembering the rule that a respectable lady must never show her bare hands in public. Hands were meant to be kept covered at all times, a strange, hand-specific code of modesty that everyone took very seriously. As Mary helps you slip them on, another rule pops into your head: no perfume. Queen Victoria herself denounced the strong, musky fragrances of the previous generation as vulgar. Instead, you discreetly dab a bit of lemon and bergamot oil onto your handkerchief, just enough to smell fresh, but never so much that it could be considered seductive. Anything too forward was frowned upon. Now, fully dressed, you make your way downstairs. The household is beginning to stir. Servants are rushing about, dusting, sweeping, polishing, each one with a task. The cook has already been in the kitchen since 5, preparing the day's first meal. In the dining room, your father sits at the head of the table, hidden behind his newspaper. Your mother is at the opposite end, already composing letters. Both are fully dressed, of course. Victorians would never be caught eating breakfast in anything remotely informal. Good morning, you say as you take your seat. Your father lowers his paper slightly, nods, then lifts it again. No warm embraces or kisses on the cheek. Public affection, even within families, is not the Victorian way. Breakfast itself is hearty. Eggs, bacon, kidneys, toast, porridge. This is the most substantial meal of the day, but you barely touch yours. The corset makes full bites nearly impossible. Jane, your mother says without looking up, Mrs. Hartley's daughter has recently become engaged. Be sure to offer your congratulations, but don't inquire about the wedding. That would be presumptuous. You nod and file it away. This is classic Victorian etiquette. Recognize major life events, but don't express too much interest. Curiosity is considered low class. After breakfast, you have some time before your morning call. You sit by the window in the drawing room and pull out your embroidery, an acceptable feminine pastime. A proper Victorian lady is never idle. As the saying goes, idle hands are the devil's workshop. Your mother joins you, picking up her own needlework. I saw Mrs. Fairchild yesterday, she says lightly. Her son has returned from university. You keep your gaze fixed on your stitching, but your heart skips slightly. Thomas Fairchild. You danced with him last season before he went off to Oxford. He was kind and didn't step on your toes, which is more than you can say for most of the men at that ball. How nice, you reply evenly. She said he asked after you. Your mother adds, watching your reaction. Your cheeks flush, but you manage to maintain composure. Did he? That's very civil of him. Your mother gives a slight satisfied smile. In the intricate game of Victorian courtship, showing too much interest is a misstep. Everything is about subtlety and restraint. Pretend you're not playing, even as every move is part of the game. At exactly 10:45, you don your bonnet, gloves, and cloak. Your mother joins you, and together you set out for Mrs. Hartley's home. In your hand, you carry a small, decorative case holding your visiting cards elegant slips of paper with your name carefully printed on them. And so your day begins, wrapped in layers of fabric and even more layers of unspoken rules. Welcome to Victorian England, where every breath, every gesture, and every word is governed by a silent code. And violating it isn't just rude, it's scandalous. These little cards are essential for the ritual of morning calls. Mrs. Hartley only lives a few streets away, but walking at a brisk pace would be considered terribly unladylike. So, you fall into the proper rhythm of a Victorian lady's stride: small, deliberate steps, spine perfectly straight, gaze politely lowered. Your enormous skirt sways dramatically as you move, occasionally threatening to knock over an unsuspecting child or an unfortunate dog that strays too close. As you walk, others pass you by, men tipping their hats in greeting. You return the gesture with the faintest nod, never locking eyes. It would be entirely improper to make direct eye contact with strangers. A gentleman would never address a lady without a formal introduction, and a respectable lady certainly wouldn't initiate conversation with an unfamiliar man. You arrive at Mrs. Hartley's residence at precisely 11 a.m. Not a minute early, not a minute late. Punctuality is non-negotiable. Arriving too soon or too late implies your schedule is so empty you had nothing better to do, an embarrassing suggestion in Victorian society. The butler opens the door. You hand over your visiting cards, one for yourself, one for your mother. He places them on a silver tray and ushers you into the drawing room, where Mrs. Hartley and her daughter Charlotte await. Everyone curtsies. There are no embraces, no cheek kisses. Victorian etiquette keeps physical contact to the barest minimum. "How lovely of you to call," Mrs. Hartley says warmly, motioning toward a small sofa. You lower yourself carefully onto the seat, mindful of your crinolin's wide steel hoops. Sitting gracefully in such a contraption is practically a performance. You must balance delicately on the edge, keeping the cage from tipping or collapsing under you. "We were thrilled to hear your happy news," your mother says to Charlotte, who blushes demurely. "Thank you," Charlotte murmurs, eyes on her lap. "Mr. Edwards is very kind." And that's it. That's all the detail you're going to receive about Charlotte's engagement. No information about the fiancé, the proposal, the wedding date, or whether she's in love. Asking about such things would be unthinkably intrusive. Victorian ladies do not pry. The conversation shifts smoothly to safer ground. The weather. Overcast but not raining. A sermon recently delivered at church, uplifting but mercifully brief. A musical performance attended earlier in the week. Impressive, but not overly showy. Everything is couched in the most moderate, refined terms. Expressing strong opinions is the mark of someone unrefined. Exactly 15 minutes later, your mother gives a barely noticeable nod. That's your signal. You both rise. "It was such a pleasure to see you," Mrs. Hartley says, standing as well. There are more curtsies, more polite goodbyes, and then you're back on the street. Morning call complete. "That went very well," your mother says as you walk home. "Charlotte looked well, don't you think?" "Very well," you agree. In Victorian speech, well is high praise. Anything more enthusiastic would be unseemly. Back at home, you enjoy a light luncheon before settling in with an improving book. Nothing too emotional, nothing too romantic. Fiction that stirs feelings is believed to be dangerous for young women. Better to stick with moral tales and historical accounts. At 4 o'clock, you have tea with your cousin Emily. She arrives at your home, and while the ritual is similar to the morning call, it's slightly more relaxed. Emily is family, after all. Still, you sit with perfect posture, speak in careful tones, and keep conversation limited to appropriate topics. Gossip is always off limits. When Emily departs, you have a few quiet hours before dinner. You sit at the piano and practice for precisely 1 hour, just enough to maintain your skill without giving the impression that you have professional aspirations. Ambition in a young woman is not encouraged. Dinner is at 7. Though it's a family meal and relatively informal, you still change into a new dress. It's slightly more elegant than your day dress, but not nearly as grand as an evening gown. Victorians change clothes multiple times a day, each outfit selected according to the exact social context. At the dinner table, conversation is courteous but carefully impersonal. Your father discusses business with your brother. Your mother speaks about her latest charitable endeavors. You listen politely and offer the occasional mild opinion if asked directly. After the meal, everyone retires to the drawing room. Your brother and father may have brandy and cigars in the study, but for women, anything stronger than sherry is inappropriate, and smoking is absolutely out of the question. You return to your piano or pick up your embroidery once again. By 10 o'clock, everyone is preparing for bed. Another day of Victorian decorum successfully completed. Mary assists you in undressing. As she removes the layers, petticoats, crinoline, bodice, and finally the corset, you can breathe deeply for the first time all day. Sweet relief. "Will you need anything else, miss?" Mary asks as she helps you into your flannel nightgown. "No, thank you, Mary," you murmur, easing yourself into bed with a sigh. She curtsies, takes the oil lamp, and slips from the room. Darkness falls, save for the soft orange glow of the banked fire in the grate. Lying there, you think about the day. All those invisible rules, the constant restraint. It's draining, certainly. But there's also comfort in the predictability, in always knowing exactly what's expected. As you drift towards sleep, you remember that tomorrow brings a formal dinner party. A whole new set of rules will come into play. But for now, you can let that wait. The distant sounds of London lull you, fog rolling in from the Thames, gas lamps flickering, a carriage passing by, the cry of a night watchman echoing through the streets. Across the city, behind those tidy facades, Londoners lie in their beds, still governed by the same unyielding rules, even in sleep. Morning returns with Mary once again pulling back the curtains. The pale winter sun struggles through the ever-present fog. "Good morning, miss," she says gently, setting a steaming cup of hot chocolate on your bedside table. It's going to be a busy day. You sit up and take a sip. Today is important. You're attending a formal dinner at the Fairchilds'. Yes, those Fairchilds'. And yes, Thomas will be there. The morning passes in a blur of activity. Your mother insists you practice piano for 2 full hours instead of the usual one. The Fairchilds may ask you to perform, she explains. Mrs. Fairchild mentioned their new pianoforte. It would be rude to decline. Ah, another rule. Never refuse a request to demonstrate your accomplishments, but never appear too eager either. It's all a very delicate game. After lunch, you and your mother take a brief walk through the nearby park. The cold winter air is actually cleaner than the inside of most homes, where coal dust clings to everything. You stroll slowly, exchanging nods with familiar faces. Gentlemen tip their hats. Ladies glide past in layers of wool. Remember, your mother says softly as you walk, you'll be seated according to social rank. Don't show any reaction to your placement, whatever it may be. You nod solemnly. The Victorian dinner table is a subtle battlefield. The most honored male guest sits beside the hostess, while the most prestigious lady is seated next to the host. Everyone else follows in a descending social order. Being seated near the end of the table sends a very clear message. Back home, preparations for the evening begin in earnest. For a formal dinner, you'll need to look your absolute best. Mary draws your bath and adds a few drops of rose oil to the water. The bathroom is cold, despite the small fire flickering low in the grate. You bathe quickly, trying not to shiver too visibly as you step onto the icy floorboards. There's no lingering in comfort here, just enough time to wash before the real ordeal begins, getting dressed for the evening. Tonight calls for full formal attire, and every detail must be perfect. Your corset is drawn tighter than it was this morning, your waist squeezed even smaller. The crinoline is larger now, flaring out wider around you like a structured dome. Your gown is pale blue silk, delicately trimmed with lace along the edges. The neckline dips slightly lower than your day dress, just enough to reveal your collarbones and the soft curve of your shoulders. Exactly the amount of skin a proper unmarried lady can show without causing scandal. Mary arranges your hair into an intricate updo, twisting and curling strands until they form a crown of elegance. Tiny silk flowers are pinned throughout the curls, just the right touch of charm. A dusting of rice powder over your face gives you the fashionable pale complexion, but no rouge, of course. Rouge is reserved for actresses and women whose reputations are already beyond saving. Proper ladies never wear visible cosmetics. "You look beautiful, miss," Mary says, stepping back to admire her handiwork. You stare into the mirror, barely recognizing the face that looks back at you. You appear exactly as a Victorian young woman is expected to, composed, refined, graceful. Your waist is impossibly narrow, your skirt comically wide. Fashion, it seems, is a constant test of endurance. But no matter how uncomfortable, fashion must be obeyed. Your father has arranged a carriage for the evening. The night is too cold to walk, and besides, arriving on foot would ruin your hair and dress. The carriage also sends an important message. It quietly signals your family's affluence. Riding, rather than walking, shows you belong among society's upper ranks. When the carriage pulls up in front of the Fairchild's grand townhouse, located on one of London's most prestigious streets, the house is ablaze with light. Every window glows. A footman in full livery opens the door and offers his hand to help you down. Inside, the warmth is immediate. Gas lamps, the latest marvel of modern innovation, cast a bright glow across the entrance hall. A maid quickly takes your cloak, revealing the full splendor of your evening attire. The butler steps forward and announces your arrival with practiced formality. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson and Miss Jane Wilson. All eyes turn toward you. You feel your cheeks flush, but you maintain perfect composure. You step into the drawing room with grace, curtsying politely to Mr. and Mrs. Fairchild. And there, standing beside his mother, is Thomas. He's taller than you remember. His evening attire fits impeccably, accentuating the broadness of his shoulders. He bows, just the right amount, deep enough to show respect, not so deep as to seem desperate. "Miss Wilson," he says, his voice deeper than you recall. "What a pleasure to see you again." "Mr. Fairchild," you reply, keeping your tone carefully neutral. "I trust Oxford is treating you well?" A faint smile tugs at the corner of his mouth. "It is, thank you, though London offers charms that Oxford simply can't compete with." Is he flirting with you? It's difficult to know. Victorian men cloak their interest behind layers of formality. Compliments are subtle, almost hidden, wrapped in etiquette and implication. More guests continue to arrive, and the room fills with the gentle hum of polite conversation. Everyone remains standing. To sit before dinner is announced would signal too much anticipation, and eagerness, especially for food, is considered distasteful. Across the room, you notice Charlotte Hartley and her fiancé, Mr. Edwards. They maintain a respectful distance, hands firmly at their sides. No tender glances, no shared smiles. To an outsider, they could easily be mistaken for mere acquaintances. Such is the restraint of Victorian courtship. Once all the guests have gathered, the butler reappears to announce, "Dinner is served." Now begins the formal procession into the dining room, a social ritual choreographed with precision. Mr. Fairchild, as the host, offers his arm to the highest-ranking lady in the room. The most distinguished gentleman is paired with the hostess. The rest of the party matches up by rank and order, forming pairs to enter the dining room 2 by 2. You are paired with a middle-aged gentleman you've never met before. Across the line, you catch a glimpse of Thomas offering his arm to an elderly woman wearing an elaborate turban of layered fabric. The dining room is breathtaking, its long table gleaming under candlelight. Crystal glasses and polished silver sparkle beneath the glow. Each place setting is laid out with surgical precision. Numerous forks, multiple knives, various spoons, each designated for a specific course. Choosing the wrong utensil at the wrong time would be nothing short of a social disaster. You find your seat about halfway down the table. It's not the most prestigious spot, but it isn't the lowest either. A neutral placement that gives you hope. Thomas is seated across the table, several seats away. During dinner, etiquette dictates that conversation be limited to those seated directly beside you. Speaking across the table would be improper. The gentleman to your right turns toward you. "I believe you are acquainted with my nephew, Miss Wilson, Charles Pembroke. Didn't you share a dance at Lady Hamilton's ball last season? You search your memory. Ah, yes, Mr. Pembroke. He stepped on your toes repeatedly and talked about nothing but his prized horse. Indeed, you say with a practiced smile. Mr. Pembroke is quite the accomplished dancer. A harmless lie in the name of social grace. Dinner progresses in carefully timed stages. First soup, then fish, followed by roasted meats, game, and finally dessert. Each course has its own serving rituals and appropriate utensils. You eat slowly, taking delicate bites, always chewing with your mouth closed. A lady must never appear to eat with enthusiasm, no matter how hungry she may be. Around you, the conversation is steady, courteous, and strictly inoffensive. Topics like politics, money, religion, or anything remotely personal are off limits. Guests instead discuss art exhibitions, recent plays, the weather, or their travels, though only to destinations deemed respectable, such as Italy or France. At one point, you notice Thomas glancing your way. When your eyes meet, he quickly looks elsewhere. In this world of rigid decorum, even brief eye contact can be charged with hidden meaning. After dessert, the evening reaches its most distinctly gendered tradition. Mrs. Fairchild catches the eye of the highest-ranking woman at the table and rises from her seat. That's the cue. One by one, the women stand and file out of the room, leaving the men behind with their port and cigars. You join the quiet procession back to the drawing room. This separation serves several purposes. The men discuss matters considered too serious or masculine for delicate female ears, business, politics, and so on. It also allows women to discreetly visit the chamber pot, an important necessity given the complexity of their clothing. And, of course, it maintains the illusion that ladies must be shielded from the scent of cigars and the strength of spirits. Back in the drawing room, the women form conversational circles. Mrs. Fairchild seats Charlotte next to her future mother-in-law, an unspoken signal of approval regarding the engagement. Then comes the dreaded invitation. "Miss Wilson," Mrs. Fairchild says with a smile, gesturing toward the pianoforte in the corner. "Would you be so kind as to play for us? You cannot refuse, but you mustn't appear too eager either." "If you wish it, Mrs. Fairchild," you reply modestly, "though I'm sure there are others here far more accomplished." "Nonsense. she says, waving a hand. "We've all heard of your talent." You approach the piano, adjusting your voluminous skirt so you can sit without knocking over the bench. You select a piece by Mozart, challenging enough to display skill, but not so dramatic as to seem like you're performing. Your posture is perfect. Your expression remains neutral. No swaying, no grimacing, no displays of emotion. Too much feeling would be frowned upon. When you finish, the ladies applaud politely. You acknowledge the applause with a small nod, then quietly return to your seat. Your hands are trembling, but you hide it well. A proper lady never lets her nerves show. Roughly 30 minutes after the ladies left the table, the gentlemen rejoin you. The scent of cigars clings faintly to their coats. Some appear slightly flushed from the port. Older men settle into armchairs. The younger ones begin circulating again. Eventually, Thomas finds his way toward you, stopping to greet others along the way, careful not to seem too eager. When he reaches you, his smile is polite. "I quite enjoyed your performance, Miss Wilson," he says. "Mozart, wasn't it?" You nod. "Yes, his sonata in C major." "You played it with great feeling," he adds quickly, though with appropriate restraint, of course. You allow yourself a soft smile. "Thank you, Mr. Fairchild. I understand you're studying the classics at Oxford, and thus begins the Victorian version of flirtation, an exchange of impersonal topics, carefully phrased, deeply coded. You talk about literature, nothing too sentimental, music, nothing too emotional, art, nothing too avant-garde. As you speak, you're both silently evaluating. Is he intelligent? Is she thoughtful? Would our personalities match? Out of the corner of your eye, you spot Mrs. Fairchild observing you both with quiet satisfaction. It's no secret she orchestrated this evening, likely with matchmaking in mind. After what feels like a few short minutes, but is closer to half an hour, Thomas excuses himself. "I must offer my congratulations to Miss Hartley on her engagement," he says, standing. "Of course," you reply, masking your disappointment. "It was lovely speaking with you, Mr. Fairchild." He bows. "The pleasure was entirely mine, Miss Wilson." As he walks away, your mother appears at your elbow. "He seems quite taken with you," she whispers. "Does he?" you ask, feigning indifference. Your mother smiles knowingly. "Don't look too interested, Jane. Nothing sends a suitor running faster than an eager young lady." The evening continues. More music, a few card games, and the constant flow of polite conversation. No one stays in one place too long. Everyone speaks to everyone else. This is the Victorian social dance, graceful, controlled, and endlessly intricate. In Victorian society, maintaining the illusion of perfect social harmony was of utmost importance. Right at 11 p.m., the first guests begin to take their leave, a subtle but universally recognized signal that it's now socially acceptable for others to start departing as well. Even the timing of a party's end is governed by unspoken rules, and the Victorians obey them religiously. Your father glances toward your mother, and with a quiet nod, she gives the signal. It's time to go. You rise with practiced elegance and make your way toward the hosts, offering your thanks with all the expected graciousness. "Thank you so much for your hospitality," you say, your curtsy measured and polite. Nearby, Thomas Fairchild catches your eye and bows once more. "Until we meet again, Miss Wilson," he murmurs, his voice soft and unreadable. "Good evening, Mr. Fairchild," you reply, your tone calm, giving away none of the questions swirling beneath the surface. Outside, your family's carriage waits. As you settle into the seat, drawing your cloak around you, a quiet sigh escapes your lips. Relief. The evening is over, and it went smoothly. No stumbles in etiquette, No social faux pas. And Thomas, he seemed genuinely interested. A successful evening, your father remarks as the carriage pulls away, which, from him, is high praise indeed. I quite agree, your mother adds. Mrs. Fairchild mentioned they'll be hosting a small musical gathering next week. We should expect an invitation. Your heart skips slightly at the mention. Another chance to see Thomas. Back home, Mary helps you out of your evening attire. She hangs up the carefully pressed gown and returns your jewelry to its case. Your hair, pinned into an elaborate arrangement for the night, falls in soft waves as she begins to remove the hairpins one by one. Did you enjoy yourself this evening, miss? Mary asks as she gently brushes out your hair. It was pleasant, you respond, keeping your tone composed. Even with your maid, you must be cautious. Servants see everything and talk freely among one another. Any trace of excitement about Thomas could easily make its way to his household through whispered gossip. Once Mary leaves, you remain seated at your dressing table for a moment, staring at your reflection. Beneath your calm expression, your mind is racing. Did Thomas go out of his way to find you during the party? What did the careful watch of his mother really mean? Will he visit, or must you wait for another event? In Victorian courtship, it often feels like playing a game of chess while blindfolded. Every move is strategic, yet, half the time, you aren't even sure you've made a move at all. And the stakes, nothing less than your entire future. You walk quietly to the window and pull back the heavy curtain. Outside, the London fog hangs thick in the air. The glow of the gas lamps turns to golden halos in the mist. Down the street, a lone handsome cab clatters along the cobblestones. Somewhere out there, you wonder if Thomas Fairchild is thinking of you too. But in this world of tightly buttoned emotions and heavily coded behavior, who can really say? You'll simply have to wait and see what your next social encounter brings, and what new rules it demands you master. That next encounter comes far sooner than expected. It's the very next day. You're in the front parlor, half reading a book on botany that's considered appropriately improving for a young lady, when Mary appears at the door. Mr. Thomas Fairchild is here, miss, she announces. He's inquiring whether you and your mother are receiving callers. Your heart leaps, but your face remains perfectly still. Please let him know we are, you reply evenly, and inform my mother. No proper young lady is ever permitted to receive a gentleman caller alone. Your mother must be present for the entire visit. Even stepping out of the room briefly would spark whispers. Mary curtsies and vanishes. You have roughly 30 seconds to compose yourself. You smooth your hair in the small mirror above the fireplace, straighten your posture, and return to your book, arranging yourself to appear casually engaged in reading, as if you hadn't been anticipating this moment all morning. Then the door opens, and there stands Thomas Fairchild, looking even more handsome in daylight. His tailored morning coat fits impeccably, his cravat is tied with crisp precision, and his polished boots gleam. He carries his top hat and gloves. A gentleman always removes his hat indoors, but only takes off his gloves once seated. Miss Wilson, he greets you with a bow. I hope I find you well this morning. Quite well, thank you, Mr. Fairchild, you answer, placing your book aside. You motion politely to a chair. Please be seated. My mother will be with us shortly. Thomas takes the seat and finally removes his gloves, slipping them neatly into his hat. In Victorian terms, this is about as casual as a man gets. I must say, I thoroughly enjoyed the evening at your parents' home, you offer, your tone light but not overly familiar. As did I, he replies. My mother was especially taken with your musical performance. Before you can respond, your mother enters the room. Immediately, Thomas rises. A gentleman always stands when a lady enters. "Mr. Fairchild," she greets him warmly. "What a pleasant surprise." Thomas bows once more. "Mrs. Wilson, I do hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all," your mother assures him as she settles on the sofa beside you. Now, the delicate dance begins. "I've come to extend an invitation," Thomas explains. "My mother is hosting a musical evening next Tuesday. She hopes Miss Wilson and your good selves will attend." So, that's the reason he's here. On the surface, he's simply acting as his mother's messenger, but he could have sent a servant. A formal invitation could have been delivered by post. The fact that he came in person, that's telling. "How thoughtful," your mother replies graciously. "We would be delighted to accept." "Excellent," Thomas says, his eyes drifting to you for the briefest moment. "My mother also hoped Miss Wilson might consider performing again. Your rendition of Mozart was much admired." And there it is. This isn't just about music, it's an audition. Mrs. Fairchild is showcasing you, evaluating your poise, your talent, your potential as a future daughter-in-law. "I'd be honored to play," you say modestly, lowering your eyes slightly. "Though I imagine your mother has invited musicians far more accomplished." Thomas shakes his head with a rare, direct compliment. "None that I know of. Your performance would be the highlight of the evening." Such a remark toes the very edge of propriety. Your mother smoothly steps in. "My daughter practices diligently, Mr. Fairchild. We appreciate the opportunity to share her progress." The conversation flows from there, pleasant, well-mannered, and entirely proper. The topic shifts to mutual acquaintances, upcoming events, recent sermons. Thomas speaks mostly to your mother, occasionally directing a comment toward you. That's the Victorian norm. Direct attention to a young woman, especially when unmarried, must be limited and controlled. At exactly 15 minutes, the official length of a morning call, Thomas stands. "I won't keep you any longer, Mrs. Wilson, Miss Wilson," he says. "I shall convey your acceptance to my mother. She will be most pleased." Your mother rings for Mary, who arrives promptly to escort him to the door. He bows again to both of you, his gaze lingering on you just a second longer than is strictly necessary. When the door closes behind him, your mother turns with a knowing smile. "Well," she says, "it seems the Fairchilds have taken a distinct interest in you." You try to appear only mildly pleased. "Mrs. Fairchild is very kind to include us." Your mother gives you a pointed look. "It wasn't Mrs. Fairchild who just called now, was it?" Before you can answer, the bell rings again. Mary reappears moments later. "Miss Charlotte Hartley and Mrs. Hartley, ma'am." More visitors. The social whirl of morning calls continues. Charlotte enters with her mother, both dressed in the latest fashion. She practically glows. Engagement clearly suits her. After the standard courtesies, Charlotte leans in slightly, her eyes shining with excitement. "Have you heard about Mrs. Pembroke?" she whispers. Your mother arches an eyebrow. "What about her?" Mrs. Hartley clicks her tongue. "It's rather shocking, I'm afraid. She was seen in Hyde Park riding alone in Mr. Foster's carriage." Your own eyebrows lift. Mrs. Pembroke is married. Mr. Foster is not, and is known for being openly flirtatious. "Perhaps a footman was present," your mother suggests diplomatically. Mrs. Hartley shakes her head. "No one else was in the carriage. My cousin's wife saw them herself." This is exactly how reputations are destroyed in Victorian society. One carriage ride, a few whispers, and a woman can go from respected matron to social outcast. Mr. Foster, on the other hand, may suffer a few raised eyebrows at his club and little else. The double standard is alive and well in 1850. Conversation soon shifts to Charlotte's wedding plans, set for 3 months from now. Her trousseau is nearly finished. The wedding breakfast will be held at her family home following the church ceremony. She radiates happiness, and as you listen, you can't help but feel a small, fluttering hope. Not jealousy, not exactly, more like anticipation. Will you soon be planning a wedding of your own, or are you reading too much into one polite visit and a glance held a little too long? After the Hartleys depart, there's barely time to gather your things before your next obligation, a committee meeting at the vicarage. Victorian women of good breeding are expected to devote time to charitable work. It's seen as a suitable channel for their compassion and energy. The meeting is long and rather dull. You and a dozen other ladies discuss distributing winter blankets to the poor, organizing soup kitchens, and collecting used clothing. The vicar's wife jots down names and assignments. You offer to collect garments from several nearby homes. It's a respectable task, and conveniently, it allows you to make more morning calls in the coming week. As you walk home with two other girls from the neighborhood, the topic shifts, inevitably, to engagements. "Have you heard that Thomas Fairchild is back from Oxford?" Emma Parker asks, too casually. "I believe I had heard that," you reply, your voice carefully composed. Emma, of course, has always had a soft spot for Thomas. "My mother says the Fairchilds are hosting a musical evening next week," she adds. "We've received an invitation." "We have as well," you reply simply, without mentioning that Thomas himself delivered yours. Emma's smile tightened ever so slightly. "How lovely," she said. "Perhaps you'll play for us. You're always so accomplished at the piano." You nod politely. "Mrs. Fairchild did request a performance," you admit, keeping your voice measured. Before you can say more, Emma's friend Sarah joins the conversation. "Thomas always did appreciate music," she adds. "I remember him turning pages for the pianist at the Johnsons' ball last season." The message between the lines is unmistakable. Both Emma and Sarah clearly see Thomas Fairchild as a potential match. And they're not the only ones. The competition for eligible bachelors in Victorian London is nothing short of fierce, especially when the bachelor in question is as handsome, well-connected, and heir to a banking fortune like Thomas. By the time you arrive back home, you're completely drained, not physically, but emotionally and mentally. Holding up the carefully crafted facade of composure required by Victorian social etiquette is no small task. Every gesture, every word, even the way you incline your head, all of it must be weighed and perfected. You barely have time to change for dinner, yet another gown, another hairstyle, before joining your family at the dining table. Tonight it's just your parents, your brother James, and yourself. James is in unusually good spirits. He's been at his club all day, socializing with other young gentlemen of standing. As a man in Victorian society, he enjoys freedoms you can only imagine. He moves through the world with far less scrutiny. He can discuss politics, ride out alone, travel freely, and no one questions his propriety. "I ran into Thomas Fairchild at the club today," James says casually, cutting into his roast beef. You keep your eyes lowered, carefully spearing a small bite of potato. "Oh?" your father asks, raising an eyebrow. "Good family, the Fairchilds, old money, solid reputation." James nods. "Thomas mentioned he called here today," he continues, now clearly aiming the conversation in your direction. "He said he came to deliver an invitation to some musical gathering his mother is hosting." "Yes, he was here this morning," your mother confirms, taking a sip of her soup. "Very proper young man." James grins, his eyes sliding toward you. "He asked quite a few questions about you, Jane." You look up despite yourself, unable to hide your interest. "Did he?" James shrugs, the grin still playing on his face. "Wanted to know if you enjoy riding. what books you're reading, whether you're fond of art exhibitions, that sort of thing. Your mother gives James a subtle warning glance, silently urging him not to tease. But behind her composed exterior, you can see the faint glow of approval in her eyes. This is important. Thomas isn't making idle conversation. He's gathering information about you, weighing compatibility, assessing whether your interests align with his own. It's the Victorian version of checking someone's dating profile. And the truth is, a match with the Fairchilds would be immensely beneficial. Thomas is not only well-positioned socially, he's the eldest son, set to inherit a thriving banking empire, but also, by all accounts, a genuinely kind and respectful man. That's a rare combination. After dinner, as is customary, you and your mother retreat to the drawing room for quiet needlework while your father and James enjoy their port and cigars in the study. As she threads her needle, your mother speaks softly. If Mr. Fairchild continues to express interest, we'll need to think about your wardrobe. That blue silk evening gown is lovely, but I dare say something new might be appropriate for the upcoming musical evening. This is your mother's way of signaling her approval. New dresses are not purchased lightly, they're an investment. And commissioning one means she considers the courtship serious. Perhaps the dressmaker could come tomorrow, you suggest, doing your best to sound merely practical. Your mother nods. I'll send a note first thing in the morning. The following days pass in a blur of preparation. The dressmaker creates a gown in pale green silk, a color that brings out the depth of your eyes without appearing too bold. You practice the piano for hours, eventually selecting Mendelssohn's Song Without Words, a piece beautiful in its simplicity, romantic yet restrained. On the morning of the musical evening, a small and unexpected parcel arrives. Mary brings it to your room, her curiosity barely hidden. "This just arrived for you, miss," she says, holding out a box wrapped in brown paper, delivered by the Fairchild's footman. Your hands tremble slightly as you untie the string. Inside is a slim volume of poetry, Tennyson's latest. A small note rests atop it, penned in a strong, elegant hand. "Miss Wilson, I thought you might enjoy these verses. The one marked on page 43 reminded me of your playing. Respectfully, T. Fairchild." You turn to page 43 and your heart skips as you read the underlined line. The heart of the listener is moved by the skilled hands of the player. Mary is still watching. "It's just a book of poetry," you say, trying to sound casual. "Mr. Fairchild thought I might enjoy it." "Very kind of him, miss," Mary replies, a knowing smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. Servants, of course, always know what's going on before anyone else. You slip the book into your drawer. Gifts between unmarried men and women are technically improper. Acceptable only if the couple is engaged. Thomas has bent the rules by sending it. Acknowledging the gift publicly would break them outright. But in the privacy of your room, you press the book briefly to your chest, feeling something stir inside that proper Victorian women aren't supposed to feel: excitement. Thomas Fairchild is, without a doubt, courting you. That evening, your family arrives at the Fairchild residence precisely on time. Not early, which would suggest desperation, and not late, which would be disrespectful. Your new gown swishes softly as you step out of the carriage, the crinoline beneath creating the perfect bell-shaped silhouette. Inside, the drawing room is already bustling with guests. Your eyes scan the room until you find him, Thomas, speaking to an older gentleman. He looks up just as you enter. Though his expression remains appropriately neutral, his eyes brighten at the sight of you. Mrs. Fairchild greets you with warm enthusiasm, complimenting your dress and thanking you in advance for your performance. She gently nudges you toward a small group of young ladies, including, rather unfortunately, Emma Parker. Emma's dress is nearly identical in color to yours, though not quite as fine in detail. She notices immediately. "What a coincidence, Miss Wilson," she says with a tight smile. "It seems we both had the same idea regarding green." What she means is, we're both trying to win Thomas Fairchild's attention. The rivalry continues. The musical portion of the evening begins with a professional singer performing several Italian arias, followed by a gentleman playing the violin. You're scheduled third, an ideal slot. Not too early, which could appear insignificant, and not too late, which would carry too much pressure. As you approach the piano, Thomas steps forward. "May I turn pages for you, Miss Wilson?" he asks, his voice smooth and formal. It's a bold offer. Sitting beside you at the piano during your performance places him unusually close, too close by Victorian standards. Everyone in the room will notice. "That would be most helpful, Mr. Fairchild," you reply, steadying your nerves. You settle at the piano, your voluminous skirt spread carefully around the bench. Thomas stands just beside you, and you can faintly smell his cologne. Sandalwood mixed with a hint of citrus. You begin to play. The piece flows gently from your fingers, graceful and lyrical, romantic yet tasteful. You've practiced this for days, but tonight it feels different. With Thomas beside you, the music seems to take on a new warmth. Once, his fingers brush yours as he turns the page. A brief, accidental contact that sends a jolt through your entire body. Still, your playing never falters. When you finish, the room applauds generously. Thomas offers his hand to help you rise, another small liberty, and whispers, "Beautifully played." You reply softly, "Thank you for your assistance." From across the room, Mrs. Fairchild beams. Mr. Fairchild gives his son a quiet nod of approval, and Emma Parker looks as though she's just bitten into something bitter. The courtship dance continues, each step carefully executed, every move rich with meaning. Later, during refreshments, Thomas discreetly brings you a cup of punch. He doesn't linger, knowing that staying too long would draw attention, but the gesture is noticed. In this society, everything is. You catch sight of Thomas's father speaking with yours by the fireplace. Their expressions are serious, deep in discussion. Your mother, following your gaze, says softly, "Your father is quite impressed with the Fairchild's banking ventures. He's considering an investment." Her tone suggests more than just finances. In Victorian society, marriages and business often go hand in hand. As the evening winds down, guests begin saying their goodbyes. Your family gathers at the entrance to await your carriage. Thomas appears once more. "Miss Wilson," he says, formally but with unmistakable intent, "might I call on you tomorrow afternoon? There's an exhibition at the Royal Academy I believe you might enjoy. With your parents' permission, of course. This is it, not a proposal, but a declaration, a formal request to court you." Your father gives a small, approving nod. "We would be honored to receive you, Mr. Fairchild. Around 2, perhaps?" 2:00 would be perfect, sir," Thomas replies. The relief in his voice subtle but real. He turns to you. "Until tomorrow, Miss Wilson." "Until tomorrow, Mr. Fairchild," you answer, your calm tone masking the thrill running through your chest. Outside, the carriage waits. Thomas offers his hand to help you in, one final touch before parting. As it pulls away, you glance back and see him still standing in the doorway, watching you vanish into the gaslit fog, and in that quiet, flickering moment, you know this story is only just beginning. His expression carries more openness, more hope, than what Victorian decorum typically permits. In the dim carriage light, your mother gently squeezes your hand. No words are exchanged, but none are needed. The courtship has begun. Officially. By tomorrow, Thomas will arrive to call for you, and the two of you, accompanied by your mother, of course, will attend the exhibition. It's the first formal step on a path that might very well lead to engagement, marriage, and perhaps a future life shared. But for tonight, you linger in the memory of the smallest things. The feeling of his hand lightly touching yours, the look he gave you across the piano, and the slim volume of poetry tucked away in your drawer. In the rigid world of Victorian society, these quiet, fleeting gestures are the equivalent of passionate declarations in other ages. Outside, the carriage continues through London's fog-drenched streets, gas lamps glowing faintly in yellow pools along the cobblestones. Somewhere in the distance, a clock chimes midnight. Another day spent navigating the labyrinth of Victorian social codes is coming to an end. But tomorrow brings with it both new expectations and new possibilities, especially those involving Thomas Fairchild. The next day breaks bright and clear, a rare and welcome contrast to London's usual wintry haze. Perhaps you think with a smile, even the weather approves of your budding connection. You're up earlier than normal, too filled with anticipation to remain asleep, though you know that showing visible eagerness is unbecoming in a well-bred young lady. Mary assists you into your walking dress, a rich burgundy wool ensemble, complete with a matching pelisse and bonnet. It's stylish, refined, but not ostentatious, exactly what a respectable young woman should wear while being courted by a man of good family. "You look quite lovely today, miss," Mary says softly as she pins your bonnet in place. "Thank you, Mary," you reply, studying your reflection. The deep burgundy tones warm your complexion, and you quietly hope Thomas will take notice. Downstairs, your mother is already prepared, dressed with the elegance befitting her role as chaperone. In Victorian courtship, a young woman is never to be left alone with her suitor, not until marriage, if it comes to that. Every interaction, every moment, must be supervised. As you both wait in the drawing room, your mother reminds you gently, "Eagerness, Jane, is not attractive in a young lady. Mr. Fairchild must feel that your favor is something to be earned, not freely offered." You nod silently, though deep down you can't help but feel the exhaustion of constantly having to conceal your feelings, to act as though you're indifferent when you're not. Still, these are the rules, and they must be followed if your reputation is to remain intact. At precisely 2 o'clock, the doorbell rings. Thomas is right on time, another point in his favor. The butler leads him in, and he offers a respectful bow to both you and your mother. "Mrs. Wilson, Miss Wilson," he says, his tone warm but perfectly formal. "I hope this afternoon finds you both in good health." "Quite well, thank you, Mr. Fairchild," your mother responds. "It's a fine day for visiting the exhibition." "Indeed," Thomas agrees. "My family's carriage is just outside, ready whenever you are." He's brought the Fairchild carriage, bearing the family crest. It's a visible statement, not just of wealth, but of genuine intention. Everything, down to the smallest detail, is part of the unspoken language of Victorian courtship. The three of you settle inside, you and your mother sharing one bench, Thomas sitting opposite. As the carriage rolls into motion, you catch him glancing at you. Though his face remains composed, admiration flickers in his eyes. "That shade suits you quite well, Miss Wilson," he remarks, then quickly adds, "You've clearly inherited your mother's excellent taste." The compliment, subtly directed toward your mother, avoids appearing too forward. He knows the social game and plays it well. "You're very kind, Mr. Fairchild," you say, lowering your eyes in polite modesty. As the carriage weaves through the bustling streets of London, Thomas points out notable landmarks, offering most of his comments to your mother, but stealing the occasional glance at you. It's all executed with textbook decorum. At the Royal Academy, he purchases all 3 tickets, yet another small but meaningful gesture. A gentleman wouldn't allow a lady to pay, particularly one he hopes to court. Inside, the gallery is crowded with well-dressed patrons, many of whom you recognize from previous social gatherings. "Miss Wilson! Mrs. Wilson!" a familiar voice calls out. You turn to find Emma Parker and her mother approaching, as expected. Emma, of course, wouldn't dream of missing a chance to insert herself into your time with Thomas. "Miss Parker, Mrs. Parker," Thomas says with a bow. Emma, ever strategic, places herself beside Thomas and gestures to a nearby painting. "Don't you find the light beautifully captured here, Mr. Fairchild? It reminds me so much of the view from my aunt's estate in the Lake District. You simply must visit sometime. The landscapes are spectacular." A bold maneuver. She's all but inviting him to join her family socially, perhaps even romantically. You keep your expression neutral, though inwardly you're exasperated by her transparency. Thomas handles it with grace. "I'm certain the Lake District is most beautiful, Miss Parker. At the moment, however, I find myself occupied with business in London. Miss Wilson and I were just discussing this portrait. The brushwork is quite exceptional." With that, he smoothly steers you and your mother away from the conversation, leaving Emma looking ever so slightly unsettled. One point to Thomas. Throughout the exhibition, you encounter others from your social circle, each interaction unfolding with the usual rhythm: greetings, mild pleasantries, curious glances exchanged. By tomorrow, everyone will be talking. It's clear. Thomas Fairchild is courting you. After an hour or so of viewing landscapes, historical scenes, and portraits, Thomas suggests taking refreshments. The Academy's tea room is modest but elegant, filled with softly murmuring guests and the faint clink of porcelain. He finds a table and orders tea and small cakes for the 3 of you. "I hope you're enjoying the exhibition, Miss Wilson," he says, folding his gloves neatly beside his cup. "Very much, Mr. Fairchild," you reply. "I found the new works by Mr. Turner particularly striking." "I suspected you might," he says, and for a moment his proper demeanor softens. "Your brother mentioned you enjoy painting yourself." "Merely as a pastime," you say modestly. In Victorian society, it's fine for a lady to dabble in art, but ambition, especially of the professional sort, is frowned upon. "I'd very much like to see your work sometime," Thomas says, then turns to your mother. "That is, of course, with your permission, Mrs. Wilson." Your mother nods approvingly. "Jane has several watercolors displayed in our drawing room. Perhaps you might view them during your next visit." An unmistakable signal. She's inviting him to call again. The courtship is moving forward. As tea is served and conversation continues, you become aware of a man at a nearby table watching you closely. He's well-dressed, middle-aged, with a scrutinizing, almost calculating look in his eyes. Something about him unsettles you. Thomas notices the slight shift in your expression. "Is everything all right, Miss Wilson?" You speak quietly. "That gentleman seems to be watching us rather intently." Thomas glances in the direction you indicated, and his expression cools. "Ah," he says. "Lord Barrington, don't trouble yourself over him." Your mother, too, has noticed. "Lord Barrington," she murmurs. "I wasn't aware he had returned to London society." There's something in her tone that catches your attention. "Do you know him, Mother?" She and Thomas exchange a brief glance, an unspoken agreement passing between them. "Lord Barrington has A reputation, your mother says carefully, particularly where young ladies are concerned. Thomas clears his throat. Perhaps we should continue our tour. There's a fine collection of miniatures just beyond this room. But as you all rise to leave, Lord Barrington stands as well and approaches. Thomas instinctively steps slightly in front of you, a subtle yet unmistakable gesture of protection. "Fairchild," Barrington says with a nod. "Mrs. Wilson, and this must be the young Miss Wilson I've heard so much about." His gaze lingers on you too long. It's not the respectful look of a gentleman, it's something else entirely, something colder. Thomas responds, his voice courteous but noticeably cooler. "Lord Barrington, I hadn't realized you were back in town." "Just returned from the continent," Barrington replies, eyes still fixed on you. "Paris was delightful, of course, but I find the charm of London's young ladies to be without equal." He turns to your mother. "Might I trouble you for an introduction?" It's a difficult position. By the rules of society, introductions should be made when requested, but Lord Barrington's character makes him unfit company for an unmarried lady. Your mother's answer will need to be perfect, and, in true Victorian fashion, she's about to deliver a master class in elegant refusal. "I'm afraid we're just leaving, Lord Barrington. Perhaps another time." It's a courteous dismissal, graceful yet unmistakably firm. A rejection, politely veiled in the language of high society. Lord Barrington's smile hardens, but he can't press the matter further without risking impropriety. "Of course," he replies smoothly. "Another time, then." As you exit the tea room, Thomas quietly shifts his position to place himself between you and Lord Barrington. Protective, yet not overstepping the bounds of propriety. His body language speaks volumes without saying a word. Once you're well out of sight, now walking through the next gallery, he leans slightly toward your mother and speaks in a low, measured voice. "I do apologize for that unfortunate encounter, Mrs. Wilson. Had I known Lord Barrington would be present today, I would have recommended a different destination entirely." Your mother shakes her head gently. "There's no need for apologies, Mr. Fairchild. You couldn't have anticipated it. I'm only grateful for how quickly and tactfully you handled the situation." Your curiosity burns silently. Who exactly is Lord Barrington, and what has he done to earn such disapproval? But you know better than to ask outright. A well-bred Victorian lady does not inquire directly about impropriety, especially not in public. You'll have to wait until you're alone with your mother to seek answers. The rest of the afternoon unfolds more peacefully. Thomas remains particularly attentive, never straying far from your side as the three of you explore the galleries. His watchfulness, though subtle, brings a comforting sense of reassurance. It's rather nice, you think, to feel protected, even if the threat today was more social than physical. Eventually, it's time to leave. Thomas escorts you and your mother back to the family carriage, offering his hand as you step inside. "I hope Lord Barrington's presence didn't diminish your enjoyment of the exhibition, Miss Wilson," he says, looking at you with quiet concern. "Not at all, Mr. Fairchild," you reply with a small smile. The artwork was far too captivating to be overshadowed by a brief moment of social discomfort. He looks visibly relieved. "I'm very glad to hear that." He pauses, then adds, "I should mention, Lord Barrington is no longer welcomed in many of London's most respectable houses. His behavior toward young ladies has fallen short of what is considered honorable. That, in Victorian society, is as close as a gentleman can come to issuing a warning. The specifics remain vague. Your delicate sensibilities are presumed too fragile for the full truth, but the implication is clear. Lord Barrington is not a man to be trusted." Back at your home, Thomas once again helps you and your mother from the carriage. At the front steps, he bows formally. Thank you for a most enjoyable afternoon, Mrs. Wilson. Miss Wilson? He hesitates slightly, then speaks with deliberate formality. Would it be possible for me to call again tomorrow? There's a matter I'd like to discuss with Mr. Wilson if he happens to be available. Your heart leaps. A matter for your father? That can only mean one thing. In the intricate dance of Victorian courtship, this is the moment when a gentleman seeks permission to offer formal addresses to a young lady, the step that precedes a proposal. Your mother remains composed, though you detect the slightest glint of satisfaction in her eyes. I believe my husband will be at home tomorrow afternoon, Mr. Fairchild. Around 3 o'clock would be convenient. 3 it is, Thomas confirms, and for a fleeting second his carefully maintained reserve softens. His eyes meet yours, and for that brief instant you see something unguarded there, something real. Until tomorrow, Miss Wilson. Until tomorrow, Mr. Fairchild, you reply, your voice steadier than the flutter in your chest. Once the door is closed behind you, your mother allows herself a small, victorious smile. Well, she says with quiet certainty, I do believe Mr. Fairchild intends to speak with your father about his intentions toward you. You nod, still too overcome with excitement to trust your voice. Showing too much eagerness, of course, would be unbecoming of a proper young lady. If your father approves, your mother continues, already shifting into planning mode, we should begin discussing your trousseau. A trousseau, the carefully curated collection of clothing, linens, and personal effects a bride brings to her new home. To begin planning, it means your mother considers the engagement nearly a certainty. Yes, mother, you say, doing your best to appear calm, though your heart is still racing. Just then, your brother James returns, bringing a gust of cold air and his usual whirlwind presence into the front hall. Jane, he exclaims when he sees your flushed cheeks. You look like someone just handed you fantastic news. Has Fairchild proposed already? James, your mother scolds gently. Such things are not discussed in that tone. But, she concedes, Mr. Fairchild did accompany your sister and me to the Royal Academy today, and he'll be calling tomorrow to speak with your father. James grins and begins removing his gloves. Well, well, congratulations, little sister. Fairchild's a good sort. Serious, maybe, but steady, reliable. Coming from James, that's high praise indeed. He hasn't proposed yet, you remind them both, though the warmth in your voice betrays your hopes. Mere formality, James says with a wink. The whole of London knows he's sweet on you. Then, as if reminded, he adds, Oh, and speaking of London gossip, have you heard about Lord Barrington's reappearance? Stirred quite a bit of talk at the club. Your mother's expression sharpens. We ran into him at the exhibition, she says tightly. Most unfortunate. James looks alarmed. You actually saw him? Did he speak to Jane? Mr. Fairchild handled everything with admirable tact, your mother assures him. But perhaps you might give your sister a clearer picture of Lord Barrington's reputation. In appropriate terms, of course. James nods with understanding. Once your mother leaves to consult the housekeeper about dinner, he turns to you. Lord Barrington, he says bluntly, is what we call a rake. Charming on the outside. Dangerous underneath. He's known for pursuing young ladies with no honorable intentions. You're taken aback by his directness. Such plain talk is unusual in your world. There was a scandal last season involving the Matthews girl, James continues. Nothing ever proven, of course, but her reputation was ruined. She's been sent to live with cousins in Scotland. You swallow hard. I see. Thank you for telling me. Just steer clear of him, James advises, though I doubt you'll have to worry about it much longer. Once you're engaged to Fairchild, Barrington won't dare come near you. the thought of being engaged to Thomas sends another quiet thrill through you. Less than a month ago, you were simply another young lady navigating the complexities of society. Now, you're on the verge of becoming the future wife of one of London's most eligible bachelors. The rest of the day passes in a pleasant daze. You go about your routine, piano practice, needlework, dinner with your family, but your thoughts keep drifting back to tomorrow and what it may bring. That evening, Mary helps you prepare for bed, brushing out your hair as she always does. But she notices your distraction. "Busy day, miss?" she asks with a small smile. "Just a visit to the Royal Academy," you reply, feigning nonchalance. "Of course, miss," Mary says knowingly. Then, after a pause, she adds, "And will Mr. Fairchild be calling again soon?" You hesitate, then admit, "He wishes to speak with my father tomorrow afternoon." Mary's eyes widen, and a delighted smile spreads across her face. "Oh, miss, that's wonderful." "He hasn't proposed yet," you remind her. "Only a matter of time," she replies, setting down the brush. "Cook's planning your favorite cake for tea tomorrow. Says we'll have something to celebrate." It seems the entire household is waiting for the moment, even if, as a proper Victorian lady, you must pretend to be completely surprised when it happens. As you lie down to sleep, the anticipation is almost too much to bear. Tomorrow, Thomas will speak with your father. If your father grants permission, and there's little reason to believe he won't, Thomas will be free to make his intentions known to you. And then, at last, the formal engagement will follow. Unlike in modern times, such a promise in Victorian society is nearly as binding as marriage itself. To break it would cause great scandal, especially for the woman. Once you say yes, there's no turning back. You think of Thomas Fairchild, his kindness, his intelligence, his quiet dignity. He's everything society would consider a perfect match. But you also think of that unspoken hope inside your heart, that what you feel now might grow into something deeper. Love, in the truest sense. Outside your window, gas lamps glow against the quiet street. Somewhere, in the still night, carriage wheels click against cobblestones. And not far across the city, in his family's grand townhouse, Thomas Fairchild is likely lying awake too, rehearsing the words he'll say to your father. Morning comes far too soon, and yet not soon enough. Your mother sits at the table discussing meal plans with the housekeeper. Your father, as always, is buried behind his newspaper. Meanwhile, you quietly push your food around the plate, too anxious to eat. At exactly 5 minutes before 3 o'clock, you excuse yourself and follow your mother into the drawing room. According to the strict etiquette of the Victorian era, when a gentleman caller is expected, a young lady must not appear too eager. She must be poised, serene, and gracefully engaged in some respectable activity. So, you pick up your needlework again, even though your hands are trembling too much to manage even a single straight stitch. Your mother settles nearby, pretending to read a book, though her eyes drift toward you more often than the page. Her expression holds a mixture of sympathy, excitement, and a touch of maternal pride. The clock strikes 3. You hear the front doorbell echo through the house. The butler's measured footsteps follow, then the soft murmur of voices in the hallway. And then, just as you feared and hoped, Thomas isn't shown to the drawing room where you wait. Instead, he's ushered into your father's study. That can only mean one thing. He's here to formally request permission to court you. Now comes the true challenge, waiting. A well-bred Victorian young lady must never be caught loitering near closed doors or attempting to eavesdrop, no matter how much she aches to hear what's being said. You sit upright, needle poised, pretending that your entire future isn't currently being discussed just one room away. 10 minutes pass, then 15. Your stitching is hopeless now, uneven, awkward. Your mother closes her book altogether, giving up the charade. She glances at the mantel clock more often than she'd care to admit. Finally, after what feels like a lifetime, though it's probably been no more than 20 minutes, you hear the door to the study open. Your father's voice, deep and composed. Then Thomas's footsteps draw nearer. Your father steps into the drawing room first, his face revealing nothing. Thomas follows, looking unusually uneasy despite his polished appearance. "My dear," your father says to your mother, "Mr. Fairchild has something he would like to discuss with Jane. Perhaps we might give them a moment or two." Your mother arches a brow. This is most irregular. In polite society, it's unthinkable to leave an unmarried couple alone, even under their own roof. But your father gives a slight nod, and after a brief pause, your mother stands. "We'll be in the morning room," she says smoothly, her eyes fixed on Thomas in a silent warning. Behave with honor, or suffer the consequences. And just like that, the impossible has happened. You're alone with Thomas Fairchild, or as alone as Victorian rules will ever permit. The door to the drawing room remains discreetly open, and your parents are just a room away. Thomas stands near the fireplace, no longer the confident gentleman you've come to know. His composure has cracked, revealing genuine nerves beneath. "Miss Wilson," he begins, then catches himself. "Jane." It's the first time he's used your given name. "I've spoken with your father," he says carefully, "and he has graciously given me his blessing to address you formally." Your heart thuds so loudly you wonder if he can hear it. This is the moment, the one every well-brought-up young woman has been raised to anticipate. He takes a cautious step closer, still keeping a respectable distance. "From our very first meeting," he says, "I've been struck by your intelligence, your grace, and the kindness in your heart. These past weeks have only deepened both my admiration and my affection." He pauses, drawing in a steadying breath. In that instant, he's not the polished Victorian suitor. He's simply a man, vulnerable and sincere, laying his heart bare. "What I'm trying to say, though poorly, I fear, is that I hold you in the highest regard, Jane Wilson. Would you do me the great honor of accepting my hand in marriage?" His words hang in the still air between you. And though you've imagined this moment many times, now that it's real, you're genuinely overwhelmed. Victorian etiquette dictates that even if a proposal is expected, a lady must appear surprised, mildly overcome. But your reaction isn't just performance. There's something in the tremor of Thomas's voice, the raw hope in his eyes, that moves you more deeply than you expected. "Mr. Fairchild," you begin automatically, then correct yourself. "Thomas," your voice falters, not to be coy, but because emotion clutches at your throat. You're supposed to be composed, demure, and delicately pleased, not breathless with feeling. "Nothing," you manage softly, "would make me happier than to accept you." Thomas's expression shifts. His entire face lights up, the calm exterior melting into something radiant and real. For just a heartbeat, you see the man behind the etiquette, a man of feeling, of joy, of hope. "Jane," he says, and nothing more. Just your name, but the way he says it, it feels like a vow, a soft, reverent caress. He steps forward, then hesitates. Even now, Victorian custom forbids almost any physical contact between betrothed couples. At most, a gloved hand might be held, barely. "May I?" he asks, extending his hand. You place yours in his, feeling the warmth of his skin through the thin glove. It's such a simple touch, but in a world so carefully chaperoned, it feels daring, even intimate. "I've brought something for you," he says quietly. With his free hand, he reaches into his waistcoat pocket and draws out a small velvet box. Inside rests a ring, his grandmother's, he tells you, a deep blue sapphire, encircled by tiny diamonds, set in a band of gold. Not ostentatious, but elegant, meaningful. It's beautiful, you say as he slides it gently onto your finger. The weight feels unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. A silent, glittering symbol of all that has just changed. Then, the sound of footsteps. Your parents return, having granted you the maximum privacy propriety allows. Thomas immediately steps back, restoring the proper distance, though his gaze remains fixed on yours. "Well?" your father asks, though his voice holds the faintest edge of amusement. "Miss Wilson," Thomas says formally, "has done me the very great honor of accepting my proposal." Your mother's eyes light up. "Wonderful," she says. "We must celebrate with champagne." The butler is summoned. Glasses are filled, toasts are made. Through it all, you feel as though you're floating, everything happening so quickly. Just weeks ago, Thomas Fairchild was merely a respectable acquaintance. Now, he is your fiancé, your future. Once the first wave of congratulations quiets, your father clears his throat. "We'll need to discuss dates," he says. "And settlements, of course." "Ah, yes. Romance may bloom, but in Victorian society, marriage is as much a contract as a love story." "I've had my solicitor draw up a few preliminary papers," Thomas replies, slipping seamlessly into businesslike formality. "I'd be honored to go over them with you tomorrow, sir." "Excellent." Your father nods approvingly. "And for the wedding, perhaps 3 months from now," Thomas suggests. "Enough time for proper arrangements, but not so long as to try the patience." The hint of eagerness in his voice sends a ripple of warmth through you. 3 months sounds just right. Your mother agrees. Sufficient for a proper trousseau, but not so long that people begin to gossip. Because, of course, gossip is another thing to be feared. A short engagement suggests impropriety. A long one implies hesitation. But 3 months, that's just right. Thomas stays for dinner, his first as your official betrothed. Conversation flows more easily now, with a warmth that wasn't there before. Your families begin to imagine the shared future ahead, and through it all, you catch Thomas stealing glances at you with an expression that could only be described as wonder. When he finally departs, he bows low over your hand, holding it just a moment longer than strictly proper. "Until tomorrow, Jane," he says, his voice low and full of promise. "Until tomorrow, Thomas," you reply, savoring the newness of his name on your lips. His letters to you, filled with affection and sincerity, never stray into anything improper, nothing that couldn't be read aloud in the parlor with company present. And yet they carry a growing warmth, a quiet but unmistakable declaration of his desire to be a husband truly worthy of you. 2 weeks before the wedding, the Fairchilds host a dinner party for both families, a formal occasion designed to allow extended relatives on each side to become acquainted before the ceremony. Your aunts and uncles discreetly appraise Thomas's family, just as his relatives evaluate yours. Fortunately, it's a success. Both families are solidly respectable, well-spoken, and, perhaps most importantly, free of any scandalous relations to worry about. "Your cousin Emily seems rather taken with my cousin William," Thomas murmurs to you, in a moment when the conversation around the table has momentarily drifted elsewhere. You follow his gaze and see Emily laughing at something William has just said. "Perhaps another match in the making," he says, his voice low and warm. You smile, amused. They do seem to get along well. "Not as well as we do," Thomas replies quietly. The simplicity of the statement catches you off guard and sends a flush of color to your cheeks. Even now, several weeks into your engagement, his direct attention has the power to unnerve you in the most pleasant way. A proper Victorian lady should never display such transparent emotion, but Thomas doesn't appear scandalized. In fact, your blush seems to please him. The final week before the wedding passes in a flurry of last-minute details. Wedding gifts arrive daily and are displayed with care in the drawing room. Polished silver tea services, delicate crystal decanters, porcelain china sets, ornate clocks and vases. Friends and relatives stop by to admire them and offer their best wishes once again. The night before the ceremony, your mother comes into your bedroom just as Mary finishes brushing your hair for the last time in the home you've always known. Tomorrow, you'll leave this room forever. You'll take your place in the Fairchild townhouse, where you and Thomas will begin your life as man and wife. "I'd like a word," your mother says gently, nodding to dismiss Mary. You already know what's coming. This is the Victorian version of the talk. Most well-brought-up young women are kept so sheltered that they enter marriage with only the vaguest notions of what happens on a wedding night. But your mother, progressive in her own quiet way, believes you should be somewhat prepared. Marriage involves physical intimacy, she begins, awkward but composed. It's part of a wife's duty to accommodate her husband's needs. It may be uncomfortable at first, but it is something one endures with grace. Not the most comforting description of married life, but this reflects the common view. Women are not expected to enjoy such things. Pleasure is seen as unseemly. Intimacy is tolerated, not embraced, and primarily for the purpose of bearing children. The important thing, your mother continues with a more confident tone, is to establish a harmonious home. Be attentive to Thomas's needs. Don't contradict him in public. Ensure the household runs smoothly so that he returns each day to peace and rest. Her words mirror the Victorian ideal of separate spheres. Men belong in the world of commerce and politics, women in the domestic sphere. Your role as a wife will be to create a calm, well-managed household, one where your husband can thrive. "I believe you and Thomas will be happy," she says at last, squeezing your hand gently. "He seems a kind man, and he clearly adores you." "Thank you, Mother," you say quietly. Though her advice may be steeped in the era's expectations, her concern for your happiness is unmistakable and deeply touching. "I believe we will be happy too." That night, sleep comes slowly. Your thoughts whirl with all that awaits you, what you're about to leave behind, and all that lies ahead. Tomorrow, you'll no longer be Miss Jane Wilson. You'll become Mrs. Thomas Fairchild. The wedding day dawns bright and clear. The ceremony is scheduled for 11 o'clock at St. George's Church, Hanover Square, the fashionable choice for London's society weddings. You're dressed with the utmost care. First, the finest undergarments from your trousseau, followed by your wedding gown, pure white with a tightly fitted bodice and a voluminous skirt. A delicate veil is placed over your carefully arranged hair. "You look beautiful, miss," Mary says softly, her eyes glistening with tears. "Begging your pardon, but you truly do." You're genuinely moved. Thank you, Mary. She's been by your side for years, helping you navigate the complexities of Victorian girlhood. Now, that chapter ends. You'll have your own lady's maid at the new house, she reminds you gently. Mrs. Fairchild's arranged it. Someone experienced with married ladies. Even your personal attendance will be different now. The carriage ride to the church passes in a dreamlike blur. Your father, looking stately in formal morning dress, helps you down and offers his arm as you step into the church. Inside, the air is fragrant with flowers, and the hush of anticipation ripples through the crowd. And there, waiting at the altar is Thomas. He looks so composed, so dignified in his wedding clothes, yet the expression on his face as he sees you walking toward him is so full of admiration, so open and unguarded, that you nearly forget yourself. No one has ever looked at you like that before. The ceremony unfolds in quiet dignity. You speak your vows in a steady, clear voice, promising to love, honor, and obey. Thomas slides a simple gold band beside your engagement ring. The vicar pronounces you man and wife. Thomas lifts your veil and presses a light kiss to your cheek, the first time his lips have touched your skin. Just like that, you are married. No longer Jane Wilson, but Mrs. Thomas Fairchild. The wedding breakfast that follows is tasteful, elegant without being boastful. Your parents have struck the delicate balance Victorian society demands, generous but not showy. Champagne flows, fine food is served, speeches are delivered. At the head table, you sit beside Thomas, still slightly dazed. He leans toward you in a quiet moment as the cake is being cut. "Are you happy, Jane?" he asks softly. "Very happy," you say, and you mean it. Despite the rigid customs, despite how quickly it's all unfolded, you've grown to care for this man deeply, perhaps even to love him, though propriety has never permitted that word to pass between you. After the toasts, you change into your traveling outfit. You and Thomas are headed to his family's country home in Kent for a modest 2-week honeymoon. A quiet, traditional retreat, typical for your class and time. The farewells are warm, if restrained. Your mother hugs you briefly. Your father shakes Thomas's hand and kisses your cheek. Then, at last, you step into the carriage together, husband and wife, alone for the first time. Thomas takes your hand, his thumb softly tracing your palm. "Well, Mrs. Fairchild," he says, voice laced with affection, "shall we begin our adventure?" You offer him a genuine smile, free from the usual constraints of performance. "Yes," you say simply. The carriage begins to roll away as your guests toss rice and petals behind you, symbols of luck and fertility. Ahead lies the unknown, marriage, with all its expectations, discoveries, and quiet joys. Society will still hold you to 1,000 rules. You'll be expected to manage the household, guide the servants, receive callers, engage in charity, and, God willing, become a mother. But as Thomas's fingers entwine with yours, and as you look into his warm, steady gaze, you feel the unmistakable sense that within these boundaries, something real and mutual is taking shape. Not just a match of social convenience, but a true partnership built on respect, affection, and growing trust. As you travel through London toward the Kent countryside, Thomas points out familiar sights along the way. His voice is animated, more relaxed than you've ever heard in public. You respond in kind, enjoying this newfound freedom to speak openly without chaperones listening in. By the time the carriage reaches the quiet fields of Kent, the sun is dipping low, casting golden light across the rolling landscape. It's peaceful here, quiet, green, and fragrant with spring blossoms. "Almost home," Thomas says as you turn onto a tree-lined lane. "Well, one of our homes. We'll split time between this house and London, if that suits you." "It suits me very well," you answer, touched that he even asks your opinion. Many Victorian husbands would never think to consult their wives. The house itself isn't a sprawling estate, but a handsome red-brick country home with white-trimmed windows and welcoming lights in the dusk. The staff is gathered at the entrance, ready to greet the new master and mistress. As the carriage stops, Thomas gives your hand a gentle squeeze. "Welcome home, Jane." Despite the whirlwind of changes, despite the endless rules and expectations that come with being a Victorian wife, you feel a quiet certainty rise within you. This is where you belong. The butler opens the carriage door. Thomas steps out first, then turns to lift you down with firm hands at your waist. You pause for a moment, standing close, no longer restricted by the strict limitations of courtship. "Shall we?" he asks, extending his arm. You take it, feeling the warmth of his body beneath the crisp wool of his coat. "Yes," you say softly. "Let's go home, together." You climb the steps at his side, leaving behind the world of unmarried girlhood and stepping into the layered, complex, rule-bound, but shared life of a Victorian wife. There will be new expectations, new challenges, but as dusk deepens and the stars begin to scatter across the sky, you cross the threshold of your new home hand in hand. The future stretches ahead. Unknown, yes, but full of promise. And with that, close your eyes. Let the sounds of Victorian London melt into memory and drift gently into dreams.